Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Breer, and welcome to episode 31 of the 11FS FinTech Insider Breakfast Show, brought to you this morning by our good friends over at MyTech, who provide tomorrow's identity verification solutions for today's uncertainty. And uncertainty we pretty much have at this stage, don't we? In this show, we bring you the best and the brightest from around the FinTech and banking landscape every single day, straight into your homes at 8:30 BST. Here, live on LinkedIn Live. Today, I'm joined by Bharat Bhushan, who is the CTO over for banking and financial markets at IBM. Super interesting job title. I mean, we've had some really interesting conversations, but today what we're going to be talking about is how technology is helping organizations and businesses during these pretty tough times that everybody's having at this stage. There's some really interesting digital solutions that have come along to aid people. But what might this look like on the other side of the pandemic as well? So good morning. How's it going? Thank you so much for getting up early on a pretty great Monday morning to talk to me.
Yeah, morning, David. Thank you for having me. I mean, you clearly made an exception today. If you have the brightest from the industry, what happened today?
Well, brightest, not the sunshine, but definitely brightest the people. We've talked before. I know you're bright. So for anybody who doesn't know your background, I mean, you've been at IBM for, I think it's almost 13 years now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you want to give us a bit of an overview of your background, and then let's get into what we're up to right now?
Yeah, sounds good. So, I think I'll probably start by saying that I have been very lucky in my career. So I born in India, in a very kind of modest background, and the first stroke of luck I had was bumping into computer science in the early 90s, just shortly after finishing my equivalent of A-levels in India, and then after doing a 3-year diploma in computer science, programming, etc. I did 12 years of software development. I worked in a variety of companies and did lots of cool stuff. And I did at the late 90s, the internet and the e-commerce was taking off. So again, I was very lucky to be born in that era that was growing in context of web-based technologies. Then had the opportunity to come to the UK in 1999, just before the dot-com bubble burst. So worked for about 4 years, then decided to go back to university because I felt that that I needed to shift my career a little bit. So went back to university here, did an MSc in computer science where I learned about AI, cybersecurity, etc. And then that helped me get into effectively security and AI type of business. And then I was headhunted into IBM in 2007, where I joined the middleware team. It was called the WebSphere user group at that time, where I focused on middleware integration. And at that time, again, a lot of the financial institutions in and around London were building their e-commerce platform, their internet banking, mobile banking, etc. I really enjoyed that time. And then was very lucky to be funded by IBM to do an MBA, which I completed in 2014. Now that was the kick for me to then, because it gave me a slightly broader perspective on what is it like to run a business, and so that got me into specifically aligned into banking, given most of my success had come from banking and financial markets. And last year I got appointed as the CTO for banking and financial markets for Europe. So it's been quite an interesting journey. So, nearly just under half in software development, and then the kind of more recent half is in pre-sales and technology. But it's just been a big stroke of luck for me. Yeah. For me to.
I mean, you must have seen IBM change quite dramatically over that period, because I mean, IBM are a company who were continually sort of reinventing and moving themselves forward. So I mean, over that 13-year period. Not just in the office, obviously, because IBM, the office in London's had a pretty major facelift, hasn't it? But the organization must have changed quite a lot during that period.
Yeah, I mean, just look at last year, we acquired Red Hat. Who would have thought, that combination would happen, 15, 20 years ago? I mean, we've been the biggest contributor to the open source community, but the fact that we're shifting to become a open source led, cloud-based companies, a big shift in culture internally within IBM as well. So I've seen big changes just in the last 13 years, but they've been people here for for the last 30 years, 40 years even, and the stories they tell are absolutely fantastic. But I think I love the reason I actually ended up staying here for this long, because if you look at my LinkedIn profile, I've jumped around from company to company every 2, maybe 3 years. But these people at IBM are absolutely fantastic. And that for me, and every 2, 3, 4 years, there's been a new challenge, new job. It's almost like joining a new company with new sets of culture and team. It's a fantastic company to work for.
Very good. For everybody over on LinkedIn right now, thank you so much for joining us this morning. As always, we do love getting questions from you. So if you've got any questions at all, then chuck them into LinkedIn. We'll weave them into the conversation and keep it kind of going. Obviously, everything that's happening right now from a pandemic perspective is very significant, and IBM are no different to anybody else in terms of this impact. But I mean, you guys are used to people being kind of all over the place in terms of remote working or distributed onto client sites. So, I mean, has it affected you guys in a major way in terms of the working processes?
I think so. IBM, there's a big population around the world, and about 98% of our population is mobile by nature of the roles that we do. So there's a big proportion of the teams that are able to work from home. And over the last 6 years, when you talked about change in the company, over the last 6 years, what our CIO office had done is it rolled out lots of external tools that we use internally. From Mural, Slack, Box. You name it, then we can bring our own device, or we have MacBooks to choose from as well. And that all of that change gave us the ability to work from anywhere, sometimes without even needing a VPN connection, for example. Right. So that yes, there is a change where we're clearly not doing any client on-premises work, but the collaboration between our clients using these tools, because we were already used to using these tools. So, for example, we've recently run design thinking workshops with our client using Murally. It's been a fantastic experience on both sides, and technology does work. So I think, and it's quite amazing how quickly people have adapted as well. So yes, there is an impact in terms of not being able to travel, but also there's on the pro side, there's good things to being at home as well, right? So being close to family, and as we were chatting before the WebEx before the stream started. That being at home has its own advantages as well. So yeah, it was fairly easy to transition from that to not being able to travel.
It makes you think, doesn't it? I wonder how much of this will. I mean, we were talking to Nick Ogden on Friday, and he's got quite a big hope that a lot of this sort of sticks afterwards in terms of, as you say. I mean, I've seen my wife and my kids more than in the last sort of 2 months, more than the previous 4 years. So actually being able to be here and the world keeps spinning and companies keep moving. I think it's going to be interesting to see how much of that sticks, isn't it?
I do hope. I mean, this has been a huge learning experience. Look at there's so many positives, simple things, David. I think before, and I don't know whether it was only a British thing or maybe some of your viewers can comment. When we before said, "How are you doing?" it was almost fake, right? But now I feel that we spend 10 minutes even if it's a 30-minute call, just asking, actually, how are you feeling? How are you doing? How's the family? How are your grandparents? When we know they have any. So I think there's a much deeper connection with my colleagues and my clients, and cleaner air in so many parts of the world. So there's lots of things, and it shows that, unfortunately, regardless of the situation, that actually the governments and individuals and industries can make big changes to look after our planet as well. So I do agree with you, and I hope that many of these things continue. And I'm certainly going to change a few habits that I had before.
I mean, I completely agree with you. I think it is amazing to see what organizations can do when they have to. And I guess, tying that back into your role, I mean, innovation in technology is happening even in lockdown, isn't it? There's things that are moving forwards, and there's people adopting things, isn't there? But what does that look like from your perspective in terms of the, during this sort of pandemic period? How is technology evolving in these organizations that you're working with?
David, I like one of the quotes that you made, which is, digital banking is only 1% done. And I think actually, if the pandemic hadn't happened, it'd probably be 1.5% done by the end of this year. But I think this pandemic is going to accelerate that, and it will be 10% done by the end of this pandemic. So the kind of projects that I'm seeing are all about digital transformation, around core modernization, taking applications to a point where they are multi-cloud ready. So taking some of the customer-facing applications to a little bit more self-service, look at the consumer aspect from being able to go into branches to people now, being able to self-serve is a huge education for the end customer itself. They're learning a lot more about the attacks that they are seeing as a result of the pandemic, which is slightly even more unfortunate than having the pandemic in the first place. So I think the whole pandemic is actually accelerating the digital, and there's a lot more focus as well, because there is going to be less people, and they have to achieve more straight through processing, and more self-serve. I think that's the future.
I think when you said core transformation, I think that is almost the elephant in the very bad elephant in the room, essentially, in many of those organizations, as you say, because it's I mean, I always say banks are not stupid. They've been tremendously successful for hundreds of years, and unfortunately, due to that success, they've never really followed through when it comes to mergers and acquisitions and integrations and decommissioning other systems. I know we've got George Kelsey watching this morning. George, I know you know what I'm talking about. But when it comes to those core transformations, then actually, how can people kind of break through? Because the limitations that many, I know when we talked before the pandemic, it's a game of abilities, but also cost efficiencies. And actually, to your point when we spoke before, unless they really break through that barrier, then a lot of it is aesthetically changing things without fundamentally changing what the organization does, right?
Oh, absolutely, David. I think before, I would say many large banks in particular, medium to large banks, use the organizational complexity as an excuse for the lack of simplicity. So they always said, we've got these layers and governance processes. And what I have seen, is those governance processes become so lean and efficient just in the last few weeks. And to your point around core modernization, I think the way we approach this is by either taking a domain-driven approach. So take a product, for example, a credit card, current account, savings, mortgages, and look at each of the component business models and look at that from a variety of angles. We look at it from readiness to move to the cloud, readiness to adopt AI, readiness to automate, and reimagining those processes in a slightly different way. So you are not having to digitize what was there before from tens or in some cases hundreds of years, right? So the fact that we have AI, cloud, data and analytics, why don't we use all of these technologies in the right combination so we can help the customer from self-service point of view, onboarding quickly, handling customer complaints quickly. The example of banks using chatbots, for example, to address the lack of resources, constraints that they're facing at the moment because of the lockdowns around the world, right? So using those to help the customer. Ultimately, I think this issue has accentuated the focus of what does it mean to be customer-centric. If you read, actually, interestingly, you read the annual statements for most banks, everybody says the same things. They talk about customer centricity. They want to be a platform business. They want to reduce their cost to income ratio. They want to get into the platform marketplaces ecosystem. But how many people are able to actually do it? It requires, to your point, it requires a major shift in the mindset and the ways you do things. If you carry on doing what you were doing before, you're not going to get there. Yeah. So it does require culture as a big change to adopt these technologies in the first place, let alone the business models.
I mean, it's a challenge, isn't it? Because, I mean, everybody wants to be the platform. Everybody wants to be Amazon, don't they? Everybody wants to be selling other people's products and sort of owning distribution. But, there is only a few major players at that scale. And actually, when you start to look at the impact that can have from how products are configured and everything, it's quite scary, really. But I think to your point, needs are changing as well, aren't they? Obviously, through this period, organizations are having problems that they never thought that they would have, or the process that they had in place to fix that. To your point, I think it's TSB you're doing work with, isn't it? Is it Smart Agent? You've got the chatbot to basically triage for a call center. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because actually, that's a problem that banks had a process in place, which would have been, bring in some extra staff in a call center, but obviously you kind of can't do that right now, can you? So their solutions sort of almost fall away, don't they? So do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing with TSB?
Yeah, I think it's a TSB and a fantastic partnership with TSB. Then in the amount of time it has taken to go from having an initial whiteboard discussion to what's the art of the possible, to actually then delivering the chatbot, which is now handling about 2,000 customer conversations every single day. I think the issue was, as you pointed out, that with contact centers often the bottleneck for particularly at times like this, or when there's news around instability of the bank or the economics or access to cash. You used to see big queues of people outside the branch, right? The Northern Rock is a good example if the recent memories come to mind. And now you then see call centers wait time go astronomically high. People might have to wait an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, but still might not be able to connect. But in times like this, there's so much changing. Government policies are changing every single day in terms of what rules and regulations banks have to follow, and that needs to be reflected in the contact center. So I think chatbot are interesting, but I think what really happens at the back of the chatbot is more interesting. So chatbot is a step one in a good direction, but let me take you there. Let me take you there for a few minutes, which is answering a frequently asked questions and answering, how do I activate my holiday is one thing, but then the banks have so much data, to your point earlier, over 100, maybe 60 years of data, 70 years of structured and unstructured data. And then using, in some cases, what we've done is understood that customers may be about to go into overdraft and that they would absolutely need a mortgage holiday, for example. So having that predictive understanding and being able to act on it fast enough is, I think, where the future is. So it's not just about being able to handle natural language processing. I think, as I said, having come from a degree in AI and algorithms, I can tell you that we've made huge progress, both in terms of the amount of hardware that's required, the processing, and then the software element as well. But really exciting stuff will start to happen when we use these technologies to make those conversations very, very personal. So when I log in, it's an authenticated journey, and then the system. I don't have to explain things to the system. It knows the kind of things I will ask. I will probably ask for, and most of these will be probabilistic models rather than deterministic models. But in situations like this, you can apply a lot of engineering and again design thinking to work out what would an individual customer be feeling, thinking, what would they want to do with these systems, and things like in situations like this, urgency and accuracy is really important, right? You want people to be able to self-serve very quickly in a matter of seconds and provide the right amount of information. So I think one of the takeaways for me from this is accuracy and trust at times like this is so important than ever before.
Completely agree. I think it's an interesting time, isn't it? I mean, I know, again, me and you've talked about this before, but the world that was promised with digital and digital banking was one-to-one relationships, wasn't it? It was about using the power of the organization, and banks have huge amounts of data to really customize these things and creating very bespoke services or very bespoke products to meet their needs. That never happened. Actually, really, what came with digital, digitized banking, is really this one-size-fits-nobody experience. And this is where actually, the power of the new technologies that are kind of coming through can really start to change that dynamic, can't it? But so, I mean, do you think? Given, I think you got that chatbot up and running in TSB in like 4 or 5 days. Which, when you consider most organizations, it would take maybe 5 days to get the meeting in the diary in the first place. So, actually getting something live, getting it up and running in an organization. I mean, is this is this them realizing that if they go about it in the right way, they can actually move things forward quickly? So, I mean, do you think there will be a more rapid adoption of digital when we sort of get the other side of the pandemic?
Absolutely. You know, I think customers. Okay, so let's think about. Let me take a step back. So today, before the pandemic, I might have gone into a branch for something that I could have done online. Maybe because I'm passing the branch. Maybe I don't know, just being lazy, and I'm just going into. Actually, that's the reverse. Yeah, I might just go into a branch for whatever reason. But now, people will think twice before they go into a branch, and also branches, if you think about it, they're not really configured for social distancing. You know, closed desks, long, you know, sometimes queues around the cashiers and stuff like that. So there's absolutely need, and I've never believed in that it's the millennials that are more digital than other. I think everybody wants convenience. So the fact that now people have practiced digital banking or self-servicing would have practiced it for 6 months, 7 months, that is a good accelerator for people. And I think what banks need to do is now deliver on that promise, right? They can't let their foot off the gas after this pandemic is over. In fact, it needs to accelerate even more. Get to that point where, as we were saying earlier, digital is a cookie cutter approach, right? So I create a process, I create something that's distributed at scale, at as low cost as possible for everybody else. Well, I think technology is there now where you can personalize every single interaction, whether it's sending in that event notification, using open banking. One of my favorite topics in the world is open banking. So using open banking to really drive value for the end customer in form of either saving them time, saving them money, help them be financially better off. That time to do that is now, because people will adopt these services, right? There's a need for that right now.
Agree. All right, well, we've got loads and loads of questions. I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of them on LinkedIn, but let's pick out a few of them and sort of run through. You might have to jump on LinkedIn and go and answer a few of these other ones that are coming through, because there is lots of them, and lots of kind of focus on, you know, is big bank technology really sufficient for them to use as a catalyst? But let's go through a look. So Brian D'Souza, so what are the most exciting technologies IBM are using to solve client problems right now? Do you which way do you see this? Because I mean, I've looked that I always find, and my conversations with you prior to this, the best CTOs are the ones who think about the problem, not just the technology. And I know you agree with this as well, but where do you see that? Do you see it's exciting technology looking for problems, or do you find the problem and figure out how to fix it?
There's plenty of that, David. And I think, you know, we in the technology industry do suffer from the shiny object syndrome. You know, there's always something more shiny or better than what was before. So I think in terms of technologies, the one that I think are really making a big difference right now are cloud is making a big difference, right? And this is not new. Quantum is making a big difference. And not just in banking, but in pharmaceutical. I've seen, you know, IBM Summit, the supercomputer being used, which has narrowed down from hundreds of thousands of medical compounds to 77 compounds that could be potentially treating coronavirus, for example. Huge, and all of the industries are interconnected, right? So banking does not work in isolation. There's interconnection between all of these industries as we live in this connected life. So, and this is one of the exciting things about working for IBM. You have so much, you know, kind of panoramic view of things that are happening. So I think the technologies that are really making a difference are AI, cloud, quantum, and the ability to then bring it all together using some of the open source technologies as well. So I see Red Hat OpenShift making a huge difference to how our clients are able to move some of the workload to the cloud, then using event-driven architectures, for example. Again, maybe I'm not mentioning some of the fancier technologies out there yet, but and I suspect you had blockchain in your mind when you were asking that question as well. So, and
I agree with you on the cloud side of things. I think, as you say, it's for me, it's not the most cutting edge of technology, but it's the technology that actually banking is now wholesale ready to really adopt. So and it has such transformative effects in terms of everything through the all of the elements through the stack. So I think as you say, quantum's really interesting, but I guess in these periods where everybody's working remotely, the bad guys and the good guys having access to quantum computing from a security perspective, there's amazingly good or bad things can happen, isn't there? But it is an interesting one to keep moving forward. There's a point on the comments here by Simon Taylor from 11FS who actually says, do you think the banks might end up like New Jersey, the state, and needing to call people out of retirement, or do you think they can modernize without the need for these things? Because I mean, this is something that I've seen a lot, and I'm sure you have as well, which is many of the people who put the strategy or the systems or actually physically coded the systems, they don't have that expertise anymore. Do you think people will adopt to those new skill sets, or do you think people will have to go learn COBOL or go learn old languages again?
So I love that analogy. I hadn't heard of that before. And this will explain what's happening with our clients at the moment. You talked about how our workplace has changed and how we're working with clients. One of the things, David, I have observed in the last 2, maybe 3 years, is that our clients do not want to give us a problem and say, go solve it and give us the solution. They really want to be part of designing the solution because ultimately they want to operate it. They want they want to change the ways of working, either from a technical point of view. And we talk about cloud. Now, yes, cloud does provide you lots of advantages, speed, innovation, et cetera, but it does require your head of availability, your engineering team to think differently, to act differently, because whilst you get all of those benefits, you also lose control, right? So you're working in a multi-tenanted shared environment. So to answer Simon's question, will people have to come back out of retirement? I think potentially, but no. Rather than sit on the fence, I'll say no. I don't think that will happen. Mainly because of the ways we are able to reverse engineer using software, reverse engineer lots of aspects of complex older languages like COBOL or C, C++, for example. But also, I've seen that desire to develop talent in the company, and there's only limited amount of pool of talent anywhere in the world, right? So all the industries, tech companies, banks are going after it. So they have to be attractive to that talent and get them to work on technologies and help them bring into the modern world, because you do need that new blood that thinks differently to design those systems differently as well, because those systems were designed by people when technology wasn't mature enough, when there were only limited amount of languages available. So no, I don't think we'll need to get people back out of their retirement homes just yet.
That takes me way back. One of my earliest jobs was as an engineer managing a database for a big insurance company with C++. So it's amazing. I'm sure it'd come flooding back to me if suddenly the day rates for C++ developers go through the roof. Then I'll be at the beginning of the queue. But I'm afraid we're probably running out of time. But there's loads and loads more questions there. I mean, I think a lot of people are on the comments. They're very optimistic about what this will mean, either for their organizations or for banking and financial services as a whole. But again, it's nice to talk to somebody who's really passionate about technology, but you've put it at the heart of solving real customer problems all the way through, which is great. So where can people find out more about the work that you're doing and you personally?
So my Twitter handle is so complex. If you can work it out, fantastic. It's _at _Bharat, even I can't remember it, _Bharat _. And most of the stuff that we work on is on ibm.com/banking. Mm-hmm. You find tons of stuff there. And I will get to the LinkedIn stream and answer a few questions as well. But it's I think it's a privilege to work in this industry. It's a privilege to have the role that I have. So I get to work on really interesting projects. And David, thank you for having me and letting me share my story. Thank you.
No problem at all. Thanks for coming on. Okay, guys, that's all we probably have for you today. Stay safe, and we will see you tomorrow. I'm going to be joined by Janet Hitchen, who spent I think she was at Apple for, I think, 8 or 9 years as their communication strategy lead. Fantastic focus on why good internal communication actually makes such a difference when it comes to organizations, when it comes to culture. And actually, I think there'll be some really, really good things that kind of come out of that. So join us tomorrow, same time. If there's anybody else you fancy me talking to in the morning, let me know. Tag them in the comments, drop me an email. By now, you probably know my email by heart, but it's just david@11fs.com. I will look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Have a great day, stay safe, and see you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Keep safe.